Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Thank you so much for inviting me to your beautiful community. So I'm very, very pleased to be here in this community today. Thank you so much. But you know, I've had the pleasure to work with Sheikh Aziz for quite some time in the Central Valley. As you know, he was there for some time. And I had quite the pleasure of working with him. And you guys are really, really, really lucky to have him in your community. And you may not know that, but you are extremely lucky. Not many people, believe me, not many people can build a center over $3 million within 3 years. There's not many people that can do that. So you should be very proud of him and be proud of yourselves for being able to achieve such a huge achievement, mashallah. I think this is a skill that Allah has given only a few people and the blessing to be able to accomplish. Yes, and I know that everybody here has contributed to that goal. I think everybody was involved. It takes a whole village to be able to make this happen, including a good board of directors. But me being on several board of directors, you can't do anything without a chief, a good director that has good leadership. So you have to be very proud of that. And I'll give you a quick example. And this is a lesson as well for communities. In the Central Valley, there was a masjid project that I was well aware of. And in this project, Sheikh Aziz actually initiated this project. And within 1 year of just announcing that project, he was able to get a large sum amount of money, which was unfathomable in the community. But because of some rifts in the community members and some of the board members, they pushed Sheikh Aziz from that project, which was one of the biggest mistakes, I think, for them. But very lucky for you guys. So instead of having a big masjid in the valley, instead you guys have the lucky and opportunity to have this masjid. So be very happy with that, inshallah. So inshallah, the topic of today this is a very, very important topic. And I think this is something that each one of us deals with, is the gap between the generations. We have the generations that have come from other countries, their first time here, and then you have the new kids, the youth that are growing up in this society. There's a big difference between back home mentality and being here and growing up here. From a youth age growing up, you experience a lot of different things than coming back from home, already having these Islamic values instilled in you, okay? So it's a big cultural gap. It's a big gap in understanding between the youth and the adults. And inshallah, there are ways and techniques to close that gap so that you guys can have a better understanding and that youth don't end up in a situation where, you know, is not good for them to be in. So let's talk about the history. We can learn a lot from history, and especially from the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. Right now, we have many challenges, as you know. There's so many challenges out there for not just the youth, but also for us, for as adults, parents, families. There's so many challenges. We forget that during the times of the Prophet ﷺ, they had similar challenges, if not even more. Their challenges were even more and more difficult at times. Just imagine some of these problems that happen today. How would we react to them? So I'm going to give a couple of examples, inshallah. So example one is one person during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he comes to the Prophet and says, listen, I can give up everything, you know, alcohol, this and that, but one thing I cannot give up is zina, okay? I just can't give it up. I can't do it, right? Imagine if somebody comes to the community leader today or someone and says, you know, I can do it, but this is what I can't do. We'll call him badmash and kick him out of the masjid, right? I mean, seriously, this is how we treat people sometimes, right? We don't take it to heart that the society and the way the human being is created, how some of these things affect us and what we have to deal with this in the society today. So this person would be shunned in the community. He would be looked down upon, right? But this is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best person in the world that Allah has created for us, the best in humankind. There is no one better than him. So imagine someone coming to the Prophet ﷺ that has the most knowledge, right? The highest honor, and being able to be honest and sincere with them, being able to approach the Prophet about some situation like this, the approachability, that by itself is a huge thing. Being able to approach someone about this type of issue, it's a big thing. So, and like I said, youth don't feel that way today. Youth don't feel, if they feel like they have a problem and they're going to tell somebody, they're going to get slaughtered, you know? They're going to get told off, or they're going to get yelled at, and so they're going to be looked down upon harshly. So in Allah's infinite mercy, Allah has given us the best of examples within the Prophet ﷺ in dealing with people. He had the best of characteristics. Sadly, we have strayed away from how we deal with people. So how did the Prophet ﷺ handle this? He said, very simply, instead of getting upset and saying, well, this is haram, astaghfirullah, how can you even think like this, brother? Get out of the masjid. What are you thinking, right? Instead, he says, would you like it if someone committed zina with your mother? And the guy says, absolutely not. I wouldn't hate that, right? How about your sister, your daughter, you know? And he said, of course not. This is ridiculous, right? So he said, whoever, the Prophet ﷺ continues to say, whoever you're going to commit zina, this act with, is someone's mother, daughter, sister. Just by that explanation in a nice, gentle manner, it convinced the person. And he said, by Allah, I will never come close to this again. And if the Prophet, imagine if he had yelled at him or had been harsh with him, the issue or the way the person would have dealt with that situation would have been different, you know? So another example, and this is everyone knows about this very clearly, is when a person, the Prophet and the Sahaba, they were in the masjid, and then all of a sudden a person comes in and he urinates, he goes into the corner and starts to urinate in the masjid, right? If I'm speaking right now, somebody comes there and starts doing that, there's going to be World War III today. Somebody's going to get killed up in this, right? That's what's going to happen. Because we don't, well, obviously today's society is a little bit different, but at the same time, the Sahabas were infuriated, you know? They wanted to do something, and the Prophet said, hold up, take it easy, right? And he said, let him finish, right? Let him finish. And there's wisdom in that too. If you don't let the guy finish, those things will be sprayed everywhere. Within 5 feet, you're going to get sprayed too, right? So he said, let him finish, inshallah. And then when the person was done, he politely, gently explains to him, hey, look, this is the house of Allah. This is not what you do here. This is a respectful environment, and you just don't do this here, in a very nice manner, right? And he actually told the companions to clean up the mess. He didn't even tell the person to clean it up, you know? So this is how you protect the honor of people. This is how you deal with people. That helped the person become closer to Allah. The way we deal with people, sometimes we have good intention. Okay? Sometimes we want to help people. When we see somebody doing something wrong, we jump down their throat. And the intention is, well, I'm going to teach this guy's doing something wrong. That's the intention, that we're going to try to fix this situation here. But sometimes the way you react actually has the negative effect, right? You actually push people away, right? That is not your intention, but that is what happens. So that's why we have to look at how the Prophet ﷺ, the best of examples, how did he react to every situation? We hear the saying, what would Jesus do, right? Well, what would the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ do? Do we ever ask ourselves that? Right? What would he do? And a lot of the times he wouldn't do what we actually do, right? So the first verses of the Quran also, they were not about prohibition. They weren't prohibiting alcohol, prohibiting zina, and all these other types of things. They were not. They weren't even talking about prayer. They were about belief and the appreciation of Allah and the belief of the Day of Judgment. That's what it was, to believe in Allah, to have that firm belief in God, okay? So we are quite backward sometimes, right? We want to fix the outward, right, without fixing the inside. An apple can look great from the outside, right? You know, the color, the texture looks good, but inside when you grab it, it could have a worm in there, it could be rotten inside, right? So it's very important that you fix from the inside out, right? Sometimes we look at the outer appearance more than we look at the inside. You build the inside of an individual, you build your heart, your soul, then the outer appearance automatically will shift. So the actions will naturally become better once you start building those. So we have to look at the root of the problem. Okay, you got to really go at the root of the problem. The Prophet ﷺ spent 3 years just focusing on developing the inner being, developing themselves. That was so important, because if in the first year or first period all these prohibitions came, nobody would have believed. It would have been too difficult for people. So you have to, we are still in a very low level development stage. Even though Islam has been around for many, many, many generations and centuries, we're still at a very low level on an educational basis. Yes, that we have scholars, alhamdulillah, but the gap is huge, right? You have people that are very, very knowledgeable, then you have some that are knowledgeable, then you have most that don't even know who Allah is at times. Especially the youth these days, I don't think we've done enough of a job, and even if we do, there's so many counterbalances out there in this environment that counteracts what we're doing. So we have to go back to the basics. Imagine someone is going into a battle, and they're given no weapons and training. Do you think they would survive in that battle? Right? Nowadays, you go, the government, U.S. government, I mean, they have the most sophisticated equipment you'll ever find anywhere. And this is what differentiates them between anyone else, is their equipment. Okay? And without that equipment, you would see a lot more casualties in war, especially on the U.S. side. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're sending youth into a virtual battlefield, right? We haven't given them the weaponry to defeat these challenges. We have to be able to do that. Inshallah, I'm going to talk about some of those things later today, and especially on Sunday in that program, I'll talk about those things some more. One of the biggest philosophies that we as Muslims have is we think that we're protected. There's a force field around us, that this is not going to affect me or my family. My son won't do this. My daughter will never do this to me. And inshallah, Allah protect every single person here, protect every family here. But there's so many cases, so many situations in families, and I deal with this all the time, where there's every single family almost seems like there's something that's going wrong in the family structure, whether it be a son or a daughter, or even issues with the parents. There's something affecting families, right? We can no longer have that persona that this is not going to affect me. When you have someone that drinks for the first time, you find out that my son is drunk or driving, and zina or pregnancy. These are real issues that are happening in our community. And thinking that this would, and the first reaction when this happens to a family is, I would never think that my daughter would do this or my son would do this. I would never think this would happen, right? And inshallah, it never does. But we have to prepare ourselves and educate and train in order for those things not to happen. There are so many forces that are out there that affect this. So let me give you some statistics. About 95%, so there was a statistic, a poll done, confidential poll. About 95% of youth do not attend the masjid regularly. And there's a reason for that. I've studied somewhat how masjids are. I'm not sure how this masjid operates. Some masjids are more advanced than others. But there's a reason why youth are not attending the masjid. There's a reason, and inshallah I can do a whole lecture on that after we do the fundraiser. But there's a reason. So 95%, that's a significant number, okay? About half of Muslim youth that attend college, according to this poll, are drinking alcohol or either drank alcohol, okay? These are significant numbers, you know? I mean, just as you come to the masjid here, there's so many billboards about alcohol, there's so many commercials, everybody is promoting alcohol. You see it everywhere you go in magazines. And so the pressure out there is a lot for these kids that don't have the tools and the equipment to say, no, I'm not going to do it. There's so much pressure out there when you have friends that are non-Muslim, that have no regard. This is not haram for them. A lot of things that the non-Muslims do, none of these things are haram for them. These are halal things for them. For them, we Muslims are weird. You don't do this? Whoa, this is weird for me. Why? You're just weird, you know? It doesn't make sense to them. And what they want to do is make you like them. You know, that's what they want to do. That's their job. So, the next statistic is a third of students, 33% students, admitted to having sexual intercourse in college. Okay? So that's a significant number too. These are people that, you know, when you're doing a poll, you're still going to lie a little bit, right? So these are people being honest, so that number probably is even higher. Over 75% have said that they have been discriminated against, okay? Muslims are being discriminated. The kids at school, they have a very difficult time, you know? They're being alienated because of their race, their culture, their religion. And this puts a lot of pressure on them. This puts a lot of pressure on the youth to say, you know what? I need to be like these people, so I'm not discriminated against, right? It takes a lot of faith, a lot of deen to say, you know what? It doesn't matter. I have faith in Allah, and no matter what these people do, I'm not going to do what they do, right? It takes a lot to do that in the society when the pressures are so large. And about half of you said they have pressured someone to do something that they were not comfortable with and they knew that was wrong. And vice versa, that they were pressured to do something that they knew was wrong but they still did it. So that means the peer pressure out there is really, really forcing you to do certain things. And friends, believe it or not, you could, even if the formula was right, you did every single thing right. You taught them Islam, you pray 5 times a day, you did everything. And there could be one friend that's out there, right, that potentially could undo what you did, okay? So it's very important to choose the right friends that are not out there partying all the time and doing whatever and have no regards for anything, and everything is allowed. You have to be careful on who you select to be your friends. They will dictate how it'll influence your decisions in your life. And no one really wants to start off by saying, no one really wants to do bad. They start off by saying, well, no, I'll never do this. I'll never go to this act, or I'll never go do this. I'll never go party. It starts off like that. And inshallah, it stays that way. But shaitan starts whispering in your ear. He starts saying, you know what? It's only going to be one time. It's only going to be one time. Don't worry. Just go ahead and do it. And you start to justify it to yourself. You're like, you know what? Maybe I'll do it one time, you know? Then it becomes twice. And then 3 times. And before you know it, you're involved in this act, which is haram, whatever it may be, and it's hard to get out of it. And now you've justified it. People around you are doing it, right? Because of the friends that you've selected. People around you are doing it. And it becomes part of it's a normal act for you. And that's when it becomes really dangerous. So we really have to be careful of that. So as parents, we really have to change the relationship we are building with our youth, okay? Because you have the ability to develop a better relationship with your youth and protect them from these negative aspects in life, okay? You have that possibility to do that. Do not think that just by bringing them to the Sunday school or bringing them to the masjid that your job is done. The majority of the time spent by them is at school and then maybe sometimes with friends. And at home, you really got to spend some time with them and educate them. And bringing them to a Sunday school is not sufficient. You have to be a good role model to them at home, constantly talk to them, constantly see what they're up to, okay? So there's a huge culture gap. We talked about that. One of the things that also, you can either be too strict. I've seen parents that are too strict. I've seen parents that are too lenient. Both of them have their own unique challenges. When you're too strict, then kids naturally want to rebel. Okay? If all their friends are doing something and they're going out, they're having fun, whatever, it could even be Islamic fun, but if you're too strict on them, they're going to want to rebel and they want to get out of there. Okay? And by rebelling, they're going to do stupid stuff. So you have to be balanced in that regard as well. By being lenient doesn't mean you have to let them do everything they want. You still have boundaries. You know, you still monitor their friends. You still monitor what they're doing and all that stuff. One of the biggest things that I think that has this gap between the generations is being harsh with your kids. Okay? If you're harsh with your kids all the time, then your kids will not want to confide in you. Okay? They will not trust you to confide in you. No matter what they're doing in their own life, they won't trust you enough to tell you what they're up to. And that's very dangerous, because if you don't know what your kids are up to, and believe me, kids are very smart. They know how to, first of all, they play parents against parents, mom against dad. If dad says no, they go talk to mom. Mom says yes, then they go ahead and do what mom said yes, right? Then they create problems with the parents. Parents start arguing, then they slip out the door. Well, not exactly, but you get my point, right? So kids are very, very intuitive, very intelligent. And sometimes they have double lives. I mean, you may think your child, and inshallah that is true, that the perfect angel, right? But they protect certain things very, some of the things that they do in front of their friends, they'll never do in front of you. So it's very important that you build that trust and confidence level with them, so they can confide in you. They can tell you what their problems are. That way you can protect them from whatever's going on. But if you're harsh with them all the time, they're like, well, I can't tell my parents this. They're just going to yell at me. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. I mean, you have to have a degree of punishment, but you can't be harsh with them all the time. Otherwise, you'll never know what your kids are up to. And on the other hand, the parents that are too lenient, they have this complex that, you know what, I need to give my kids everything that I didn't have, okay? Everything that I didn't have growing up, I struggled. I don't want my kids to struggle, right? And now youth, literally youth, I see them all the time. They have everything and more than I can imagine having when I was younger. They have more than what I have right now, and I have a good job. So they got so many things going for them. It's amazing. But they really don't value anything. The value system for them breaks down completely. If they don't work hard, or they don't know what it means to have what they have, then that's going to be a problem in the future. If you notice in society, many of the people that are successful, they're successful because they worked hard in their life, they failed, and they struggled. Basically, when you give youth every single thing, you fulfill their desires, that affects their character at the end of the day, because they have every single thing in front of them, and they don't value that. The more youth's lives are made easier, and that's good. We need to make their lives easier, no doubt about that. But if you fulfill every desire, something's going to go wrong in the future. Believe me. You have to give them responsibility. You have to be able to say no at certain times. And it's sometimes tough. It's tough to say no to them because you want them to be happy. But keep in mind that there's also dangers in that. Now kids, I mean, they act like they deserve everything. They have no responsibility. Everything's really given to them. You know, they don't even take out the garbage. They don't do nothing these days. We got to teach them some responsibility so when they grow up, they understand that value, they show the respect back, and they value what you've given to them. Now, and you hear this, and I used to say this all the time. You hear this a lot, people say, well, my parents spoiled me, I'm a spoiled kid. I just got the iPhone 10 yesterday. Hey, the iPhone 10 is not, yeah, I got it. My parents got it for me. Oh, you're so spoiled, you know? And people take pride in the fact, look, I'm spoiled. I get everything that I want. We take pride in the fact that we're spoiled, right? But what is the definition of spoiled? And I'll read it. I went to dictionary.com to look at the definition, just in case you want to look something at dictionary.com. They're not paying me to say this, by the way. So it says to damage severely or harm something, especially with reference to its excellence, value, usefulness, or to impair, damage, or harm the character or nature of someone by unwise treatment, excessive indulgence. So spoil is actually a bad thing, you know? Spoil is a bad thing. So to be spoiled, you're hurting, you're harming that person, or that's something. Spoil is not a good thing. In a sense, in a small amount, small degree, it's a good thing. But overall, spoiling itself, it harms the character or nature of someone. Okay? Therefore, parents must institute what I believe to call tough love. Okay? And inshallah, one of the programs that I'm working on is a tough love series. Okay? There's a lot of things there's like a 10-point system, inshallah, I'm working on. And tough love is very hard to do sometimes, you know? To say no to your kid when they really want something, but you have to have tough love for them. Tough love is a good thing. To not be able to fulfill their requirements, knowing that they need something, and I'm not talking about they need jeans for school or something like that, but I'm talking about, you know, their wants. So how can you teach them the values if we don't go and do that? And the other thing, talking about, you know, not being harsh, you need to befriend your kids. You know, you need to befriend them. But at the same time, some parents, I say, you know what, I just want to be my kid's best friend. I just want to be their best friend. We'll go hang out. We'll do this. But there's problems with that too. They already have a lot of friends. They still need some discipline. They still need some discipline. They still need you to be a parent, right? So you're always walking a fine line, right? Is this too harsh? Is this too... There's always a fine line. It's hard to find that balance because kids are tricky. They really are, you know? And so just think about the last time your kid did something really bad. How did you react? Okay, how did you react to that? You may have yelled or screamed, and God forbid, even beat the little brat. I'm just kidding. Nobody's a little brat here. Obviously, that is not the way the Prophet ﷺ dealt with such issues, right? We should always say, well, what would the Prophet ﷺ do in this situation? We should ask ourselves that. We really should. We should always ask ourselves before we react, and sometimes we're very emotional beings. We're very emotional. We react very quickly, very harshly. That's it. No more food for you for a month. Poor guy's going to die. You know, I mean, sometimes we're so quick to react and, you know, we cut off friendships, relationships with people. We've known friends for years, and all of a sudden somebody does something that said, I'm never talking to you again, you know? We react so quickly, you know? So inshallah, you know, think about it. What would the Prophet say? How would he handle certain situations? And really, if you're harsh, you're really alienating yourself, because then who will they confide in if they can't confide in you? They'll confide in their friend, right? And inshallah, it's a Muslim friend. And sometimes that Muslim friend may not be the best of Muslims to confide in. And if it's not a Muslim friend, then it's a non-Muslim friend. And imagine what kind of advice they get from that. So kids are going to confide in someone. They're going to confide in someone who they trust. And hopefully it's you that they can talk to about anything. Okay? They should be able to talk to you about anything and everything. And the most important thing, I think, one of the biggest problems in this society as a whole is the breakdown of the family system. Okay? You used to have where people would come home, have dinner together as a family, and this is even in the Christian faith. This is a big issue that they're dealing with, that the breakdown of the family system, right? Now, even if people were to have a family dinner, half of them are texting, and they may be even texting you across the room, hey, how's it going? Did you like your food? You know? People don't talk to each other anymore. They take pictures of their own food and they send that to the other person, their brother right sitting next door. What's going on? You know? The whole value system. And then somebody may be the dad may be writing an email, hey, I'm guilty of that myself. I'm guilty of a lot of these things. I remind myself to, inshallah, improve a lot of these things myself, because I'll be talking to somebody, a text comes in, and I'm talking and texting at the same time. You know? So I'm guilty of that as well. But really, one of the things, I think you really got to spend time with the kids. And I'm not talking about sitting and watching TV with them. That is not family time. Okay? Having dinner together, talking about their day, talking about what they did, how school's going, instilling one Islamic value in them. You know, a day is going to be a big difference in the future. Talking about important issues like drugs, alcohol, sex, all this stuff, it's a taboo to talk about these things, but this is happening every day, in and out, all day long. This is what they hear on the radio. If you actually listen to the radio, I don't know what famous station you have here, but look at the lyrics that the music has today. It promotes everything negative, everything that is haram. It promotes it. Every day, all day, artists coming up, And this has a big impact on youth. It really does. This is what they look up to. These are the artists that they're looking up to. There has to be a counterbalance for them, okay? And I'm talking about you yell at them. I'm talking about talk about, some of the Islamic principles, about character, about, staying away from these things. I guarantee, well, I can't guarantee it, but if you start to talk about these issues at a young age, don't wait until there's 21 years old to talk about this, or even 16. You got to talk about these as little as elementary school. Kids are having problems at a very small age these days. Society problems are shifting to smaller kids these days. The problems that I used to experience in high school or college now are shifted to younger kids. So if we don't tell them now to stay away from these things, it may be too late. We got to talk about these things. Make it a habit to share one nice principle of Islam. And the solution of saying, you know what, kids are very smart, they have a lot of questions. Just to say, you know what, it's haram, just do it or don't do it, that's not the answer. They need to know what the answer is. In Islam, through the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, there's an answer for every single question. Every single thing that's haram, that's in the Quran, there's a reason for it. Allah didn't just do this for us because Allah is trying to punish us or being harsh on us. It's to protect us from our own selves. Every single thing that's haram is for that reason, to protect us from our own selves. Because we can justify anything to ourselves. We can say, well, look, this is, I'll be okay, right? But no, Allah knows that. Allah knows how He has created us, how our psychology works. So we need to really keep that stuff in mind. And I see several youth here today. You really must learn to appreciate all the things that your parents have done for you. We really, really do. Sometimes we feel that our parents are too strict. Sometimes we feel they don't understand us and you don't understand them. But really the biggest supporter you'll ever have in your entire life is your parents. They care for your welfare. They want the best for you in this life and obviously in the hereafter. Your friends, everyone will go away. If you have a problem or something, everyone will go away except for your parents. They will always be there for you. No matter what you do, they may be upset with you. They may not like you they may not have you eat that nice steak on a Sunday. Is my speech that bad? I was really going to raise that $295,000 today too. But really, you have to understand that you have to appreciate them. You have to help them around the house. You got to do some of those things. Because nobody loves you more than your parents do. Nobody. okay? Nobody will be there for you more than your parents will. Sometimes it's easy to just run out of the house and go with your friends and stuff and neglect the duties and responsibilities to your house. Don't do that. Because one of these days, you may find yourself in a situation and the only person or people that will bail you out is your parents. So respect them. And we, as kids, every kid thinks that I know everything and my parents don't know anything, right? We all think that. I used to think that all the time. Dad, you don't know anything. What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense to me, you know? But when you grow older, you start seeing the wisdom behind what they think and what they do, right? Especially when you have kids, and then you're like, oh, okay, these things start making sense, right? They do know what they're talking about, you know? So keep that in mind. You're not always right, okay? I'm always right. Just kidding. Actually, I am. So although it may be difficult to confide in your parents sometimes, you know, try to open up with them. Parents are reasonable. They can be reasonable, right? It's how you react. If you walk out and storm and yell and scream, of course they're going to get irritated with you. If you're reasonable, they're going to be reasonable back. So vice versa. So one of the things, I think I'm reaching my time, right? Okay. So one of the things that I think that in developing youth, it's very important that both parents and youth understand each other, because when they don't, you have a huge gap and huge shift. And you have two levels of understanding of how everything is working. Parents may think everything's for the kids all right because there's a dual personality. You know, my kids are great, they're not doing anything wrong, and you'll never know what they're up to. So it's very important to bridge that gap, make it closer so you know what they're up to, knowing where they're at, knowing what they're involved in. And you know, kids, they're going to get themselves busy with something. There's so many things that are going out in society that are pulling them towards them, right? Why would they want to be on a Friday night? Why would they want to be in a masjid when there's so much fun stuff going outside? Why would they want to be here, right? So we have to be able to create alternatives, programs for them that they can participate in. We need to provide them a forum or a venue that is fun, but yet educational at the same time, okay? We always want to do what I've seen most is, well, let's get a group of kids together and we'll lecture them for a couple of hours. And then if there's time, we'll give them pizza, right? You can get pizza on the street for $5, Little Caesars. You guys have that here? Because in California we do, and those pizzas are good. For $5, 3 people can eat, right? So I'm just saying, you know, that allure is not attractive enough. You know, I remember when I was a kid, pizza parties were great. I don't think nobody cares about pizza parties anymore. I don't know. There has to be a better solution that we can attract these kids. Instead of what they're doing outside, we can have them do it in an Islamic environment. We have to provide an alternative. And one of the things that I've seen some cities do is that when dances, you know, dances are big in high schools and elementary schools, right? And these are dances where, you know, boys and girls go and there's a dance and there's a function at school. And of course, for non-Muslims, this is the normal way of life. But what I've seen other cities do is that during that period, all the girls get together at somebody's house, at somebody's house or at the masjid, and they have their own program, you know, that night. So there's an alternative for them to participate in. And the same thing for the boys. There's a program that the boys do for that night, and it could be, you know, video game night or something like that. But you got to provide them with alternatives. If there's no alternatives, then they're going to go out and do what they're going to do, right? So we really got to work on that, and they're just putting up one program one day or that's not sustainable. You got to have consistency in programs, okay? And inshallah, on Sunday, I'm actually going to break down how to develop it. For my deen, in the Central Valley, there's a big gap for programs for youth. And within 3 years, alhamdulillah, we were able to have a center of our own and have, you know, a couple of people operating, a program manager, a coordinator. It's possible to make it happen. okay, with the right system, right structure, we have to provide a venue for them. You know, alhamdulillah, this is nice. I saw a basketball court outside. That's good. There's positive. There's other things that can be put together that kids can be attracted to. In our center, we have 2 big screen, a lounge area. We got a pool table, and kids just come and play video games. We have an after-school program that we're launching. We have tutoring. I mean, these are things. Instead of having them be outside somewhere else, you can provide them in an Islamic environment, right, where they're protected and safe. So that's kind of some of the things, and inshallah, generally I like my programs to be interactive, so if anybody has any questions, inshallah, yeah.